Welcome to Global One Media's Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Swido. I'm speaking today with Thomas Lamb. He's the chief executive and a board member of Myriad Uranium. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you've been working in the commodities and exploration space for more than 20 years. You've drilled for gold, copper, cobalt, zinc, to name just a few precious and base metals. But this is the first time that you're focused on uranium. You joined Myriad Uranium 1 year ago. Tell us, what prompted the move?
Well, I've always been a fan of uranium. I think it's been interesting all along throughout my career, but of course we haven't had a price spike or a lot of attention since about 2008, 2009. So very few people were focused on it. Just the really smart people who were looking ahead. What happened to me is around 2005, I left corporate law. I was a securities lawyer and started a gold mining company with a friend, and we got quite lucky. 2005, we had a nice IPO. I moved to Europe and started being really an entrepreneur in mining. Ended up in East Africa around 2012 and started a project generator. It created a cobalt exploration company, which was then bought by Jervois Global, which was an offshoot of Glencore, effectively, and I was an executive for them. So it was the gold deal was good. We got lucky there. The cobalt deal, which we built, was sold to a really nice cobalt company called Jervois. I was an executive there, as I mentioned. So this is a build up to doing the next interesting thing. And there I was in East Africa a year or two ago, looking around for what the next interesting thing might be. My friend, for many years, Pete Smith, was the CEO of this company, Myriad Uranium. He's a Canadian, a lawyer like me, very smart, successful guy. He put this deal together, Myriad Uranium, with a friend from Cambridge University. He went to Cambridge through a Cambridge contact. He got these assets, these really exciting uranium assets, and put them into Myriad. And then he had to run the company. However, it's Africa. He's from Canada. They speak French in Niger, as you know. I speak French. He doesn't, et cetera. I have a lot of Africa experience. He brought me in as a consultant, and over time, it made sense for me to become CEO. And that is the journey of me becoming CEO, getting involved. I liked uranium, very interesting. I know Africa. I speak French. I built some companies and had exits. So that's the story. Here I am as CEO. It's been about 1 year.
That's fantastic. And it's certainly a good environment to be in uranium right now, one that's very conducive to uranium exploration. Demand is on the rise as countries are working to lower their carbon footprints. The price of uranium has jumped more than 50% since the beginning of the year. That continues a trend that started actually about 3 years ago when uranium sold for less than half as much as it does today. So I want to look at Euro's major projects. I understand that Myriad Uranium has two major projects, one at Copper Mountain in Wyoming, and another, as you mentioned, in the Sahara Desert in the north of Niger. We'll take a look at Wyoming first. And despite the name of the location, Copper Mountain, I understand you're actually searching for uranium there. So tell us, what's the latest and what are the prospects like at that Copper Mountain site?
So that's right. It is called Copper Mountain, which, it's a bit funny because it has a really big uranium endowment. It's an area right in the center of Wyoming. Wyoming is the main state in the United States for uranium exploration and production, lots of situ projects there, et cetera. So Copper Mountain has multiple historic producing mines. So in the 1950s and 60s, it produced a lot of uranium. One in particular, the Arrowhead mine, produced 500,000 pounds of uranium, which back then was a significant producer. Again, that's in the 50s and 60s. That's right in the center of our claims. So we have just under 2,000 acres. Hectares. Is it 2,000 hectares? Your system in the United States. So
you got a lot of land, is what it is.
Exactly. We have a really nice big footprint. Copper Mountain. It's a historic producer of 500,000 pounds of uranium, and it has, now we know, 6 or more uranium deposits on it in that discrete area. Our licenses host all of those deposits. It's a very exciting uranium exploration project at the moment, but it's quite advanced. And so the next bit about this that's fascinating is when we in the summer signed a letter of intent to acquire up to 75% of the Wyoming project, Copper Mountain project. Neither we nor our deal partner, Rush Rare Metals, which I encourage your viewers to take a look at, excellent company, really understood the project that well. It was the 43-101 that our deal partners have on the project. The authors in March of earlier this year stated, this is a really interesting project. It has historic production. It saw a lot of exploration, but you need to go find the historic data and to learn about it so that we can understand what it has and what you need to do. Otherwise, we're going to have to start a maiden drill program on this project. So it's really interesting. We cut this deal and the other side cut this deal without really understanding the project all that well. So it turned into a really big opportunity, kind of what's this going to be like? Well, very soon after we signed the letter of intent, right around that time, the CEO of Rush, which actually happens to be Pete Smith, the previous CEO of Myriad, we can get into that another time. That's why we were able to cut the deal, is because the companies were close. Pete was driving down a dirt road in Wyoming and came across a rancher. He was visiting the project, and the rancher stopped and they had a chat, and rancher said, hey, would you like to come for a cup of coffee? I have a bunch of historic data that I've been storing for years and years and years. Would you like to come take a look at it? So Pete said, sure. They went and had a cup of coffee. Pete went through these 7 big rubber bins full of data. And lo and behold, a lot of the historic data that we've been seeking. Here's and we drove it back to Vancouver, Canada from Wyoming. And we went through it. And here's what
that's an awesome story. So he was just driving, he met a rancher basically by coincidence, and it had the data that you needed.
Exactly. Well, a lot of it, that's right. And I suppose here's what it said. Historically, Union Pacific, big railway company, held this land through a subsidiary, Rocky Mountain Energy. They drilled 2,000 drill holes into our project. They spent $74 million US exploring and advancing our project. They built a mine plan. They designed a mine plan for our project area, and that included a pit and a whole mine plan and a leach pad. And they built the leach pad. They were just about to start mining. This is 1979. So we're going through all the data, and we discovered this. We discovered that the ore is highly leachable with recoveries. You don't need a mill. Highly leachable recoveries well into the 90s, above 92, and a lot of tests above 96% recovery. We got maps and plans of where the high grade uranium is. Which high grade areas should be followed up. We learned all sorts of amazing things, which have launched us into what should be a completely different category of company. So it's gone from a small micro cap company that explorer with interesting projects to a company with a Copper Mountain, Wyoming historic producer, and then the punchline at the end of all this is that within these documents are historic resource estimates of the amount of uranium at Copper Mountain.
So what does that mean for you all going forward now? You have the data, you know some uranium is there. What happens next?
Well, these resource estimates say there's between 15 and 30 million of pounds of uranium in the ground, depending on the combination of deposits. And there is potential with more work, uranium of up to 63.8 million pounds of uranium, just taking into account 2 out of the 5 or 6 deposits on our license. So what we need to do is we need to take our existing data and more data, which we're in the process of acquiring, and bring these resource estimates current under the strict Canadian 43-101 rules. We have historic resource right now. We need to bring that up to current resource. So that is the plan, among other things, acquiring more land, et cetera.
So just real quick, for listeners who may not know, what exactly is 43-101?
So Canada has strict and conservative rules regarding what you can say about mineral projects. So if you are governed by Canadian rules, it's a little bit unlike the US, where you get to sort of be a little more freewheeling. You have to be very conservative, and you have to have independent experts verify and sign off on what you say about your resource projects. That's if you're Canadian regulated. And so to be able to tell people that we in fact have 60 million or 20 million pounds of uranium currently, we have to do enough work to satisfy geologists so that they will sign off. That's under the Canadian regulations.
Okay, great. So it means you have to have the data to back up what you're saying.
Exactly.
So on that note, let's turn now to your other major project, which is in the West African nation of Niger, up in the north near Agadez. Uranium is one of Niger's most important exports. Give us an overview of your company's licenses there.
So we have 4 licenses, over 1,800 square kilometers in aggregate. These 4 licenses they're very exciting exploration licenses, previously owned by Areva, which is now Orano, that's the French government. They are located right adjacent to Africa's 2 most important uranium deposits on the same structures. Number 1, Imouraren, which is on the Arlet Fault. That's Africa's largest uranium deposit, the world's second largest. It's 380 million plus pounds of uranium. We're on the same structure and adjacent. We're also down the structure and very close to Global Atomic's Dasa project. This is one of the largest projects in the world also, but it's super high grade, a bit closer to Athabasca, like in Canada. So the two of the most important uranium deposits in the world, and we're right up against them on the same structures. We have, top-notch, world-class exploration projects. We're also squeezed in between GoviEx, which Robert Friedland's sons is the chairman of that company. GoviEx is a very nice uranium deposit called the Madawella deposit. We're kind of jammed in between Madawella and Orano's Imouraren. So we're in Niger. Niger is an amazing up-and-coming uranium country, as you know, with recent political problems, but those will get sorted.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. So Tom, tell us, where exactly is your company in terms of these projects in Niger right now? How far advanced are they?
We picked them up about just over a year ago. We've done some geophysics and some groundwork. We were active this summer, if you're a Northern Hemisphere person, active in the summer. And then, of course, there was a military coup in July in Niger. So we had to pause our work while that gets sorted out. Not an uncommon occurrence in Niger. And so everybody's just paused their work. So we're still in the early stages, preliminaries. However, Orano, in fact, its predecessor, Areva, drilled a lot of holes, 150, 160 holes on our project. We have that data. They did a lot of geophysics to help us find uranium. We have that data. They found uranium on our project areas. We have that data. So we have a big head start for when we get back to exploring in Niger.
That's fantastic. As you mentioned, back in July, the head of Niger's presidential guard overthrew the democratically elected government there. Just last month, the U.S. State Department officially declared that this was a coup d'etat, which means that $500 million worth of assistance programs have been suspended. Military cooperation has been significantly cut back. You mentioned that you had to put your projects there on pause as a result. Is that right?
That's right. Now, you and your viewers may know that 2 weeks ago, approximately, the U.S. government made an exception, which surprised everybody, but we're so happy about. Global Atomic has the world's top project that's in development right now, really, in Niger. And I think to secure the supply of that uranium for the West, keep it away from, for example, the Chinese and the Russians, the US government has allowed, as an exception, has allowed that project to be financed by US development banks. So while the United States has declared this a coup, which triggers all sorts of issues for the country, from development aid and banking, et cetera. On the plus side, they see that uranium is very strategic. And so this has been a big boost to Niger and the uranium sector in Niger, which is a little bit of positivity versus the announcement of the coup.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad to hear there is some positivity. Niger is a wonderful country. As I was telling you before, I used to live there. It's culturally, it's so rich.
That's
and
right.
I hope that this uranium and the work you all do there help spread the economic wealth as well, if you will.
Absolutely essential. That's right. Spread it.
So when you come to exploration, there are a number of risks. Political instability is sometimes near the top of the list, but it's hardly the only factor. Tell us what other risks are on your radar right now, and how is your company addressing them?
Okay, well, back to, and I should have emphasized this right at the beginning, we have historic resource in Wyoming, 15 to 30 million pounds of identified historic resource, and then 63.8 million pounds of potential, just taking into account 2 of the 5 or 6 deposits on our licenses. So that's already a lot of uranium. What are the risks here? Exploration risk. Well, what if we do work to confirm those historic resources, but they don't come through? Now, the geologists that did that work spent 74 million US on it. In today's dollars, they were the top of the field, uranium geologists in the 1970s. But there's always the risk that everybody gets let down. It doesn't. It's not as good as they thought it was. So that's a risk. There are political risks. For example, the world turns against uranium. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the world is emphatically and with enthusiasm embracing uranium right now and nuclear energy. There's always exploration risk in every location. You can have problems locally. You miss. Things are more expensive than you think. These are all issues. But in Wyoming is the heartland of uranium in the United States. So we're going to have lots of local support, great drillers, fantastic geologists. So we're having highly skilled people and government support really mitigates the main risks. So that's Wyoming. We'll do what we can, keep costs down. Niger. So these are such huge land packages that we have there, 1,800 square kilometers. So there's a vastness to it. The nature of these deposits, you can go a little ways and then you think you're going to have a lot of uranium, all of a sudden you don't. So that's part of the fun and the heartache and pain, but also the ecstasy, the absolutely amazing excitement of finding uranium. So it's in Niger because of the nature of the deposit. So that's exploration risk. We have to do geophysics to mitigate that, help us identify the structures. The risks there are that you miss, you spend money and you miss. And then on top of that, political risk, because it and other countries in the region are politically less stable. So you do your best.
All right, well, thank you for walking us through those. I think it's important that people understand anytime you make an investment, there's a risk reward trade-off, and we don't always talk about those risks, but once you understand them, then you can assess it and say, okay, is this a good venture or not? And on that topic, I want to talk about investing in your company. If we look at how the share price has been doing, Myriad Uranium, it's down about 20% since the beginning of the year, but it has been on a rally these past few months, up more than 30%. So this is the elevator pitch question. Tell us, why is Myriad Uranium a stock to watch?
Well, we have a huge amount we're like coiled steel. We can create a huge amount of torque for people, for investors, unlike a lot of companies. It's unlike, the very few companies in a position like ours, $5 million Canadian market cap, with the potential to very quickly have a resource that is brought current, that is worth, billions of dollars potentially. So you just don't get that with many companies. And that is why we're a stock to watch. If we can bring our historic resource in Wyoming current, that takes us up. It should take us up based on comps many times our market cap. That is very exciting. Hopefully we're able to do that. Second thing, in Niger, we are up against the biggest and best uranium deposits in Africa and the second largest in the world. The French were about to explore our areas, but they got cut off by Fukushima and had to relinquish these licenses. They were just about to continue their work into our licenses in Niger. Maybe we have the same type of deposit that just a few kilometers south of us, Imouraren. That's 380 million pounds of uranium, second largest in the world. The French were trying to find the same type of deposit in our license. If we find that, we go from classic 5 billion market cap to multi-billion-dollar market cap. That is why this is exciting. That is why we have a really loyal investor following, and we're a sleeper. People don't know about us. We don't do a lot of marketing. We have a low profile. We have devoted fans, the people who do know about us. So I think we're an interesting company from that point of view. The risk reward on us is very, very good.
Well, I have a feeling after this interview, you're going to have a few more devoted fans. Tom, it's really been interesting speaking with you to hear about the historic data in Wyoming, to hear about the size of your tracks in Niger. I mean, that's just huge and seems to have a lot of potential. Really, thank you for taking time to speak with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I've been talking with Myriad Uranium CEO and board member Thomas Lamb, and you've been watching Global One Media's Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Suedo.